My name is Rose. I'm 19 now, but the story I'm about to tell started when I was just 10 years old, the day everything in my life changed. It was a Tuesday. I remember it clearly because I had just gotten an A on my science test, and I couldn't wait to show it to my dad. He always got excited about my grades, and we had this little tradition: if I did well in school, he'd take me out for ice cream. He'd been promising to take me that whole week, so when I got home from school, I was smiling and full of excitement, but something felt wrong the moment I walked through the door. Dad's car wasn't in the driveway. That was strange. He always got home before me. I walked into the kitchen and saw Mom sitting at the table. Her eyes were red and puffy, like she'd been crying. She looked tired, almost empty. "Where's Dad?" I asked, dropping my backpack to the floor. She didn't answer right away. She just stared at the table, then finally looked at me and said, "Go to your room, Rose." I was confused. Something was wrong, but she wouldn't explain. Dad was supposed to be there. We were supposed to go get ice cream. That's all I could think about. For days, I kept asking where Dad was. Every time I brought it up, Mom would either ignore me or change the subject. A week later, she finally sat me down and said the words that shattered my heart. "Your father and I are getting divorced," she told me. "He's gone, Rose. He left us." I was stunned. "But, where did he go? When is he coming back?" Mom's face turned cold. "He's not coming back. He abandoned us. He doesn't care about us anymore." After that, every time I asked about him, she got angry. "Your father is a selfish man," she'd snap. "He doesn't pay child support. He vanished. Nobody knows where he is, and frankly, nobody cares." She also stopped taking me to see Dad's side of the family, my grandparents in Ohio. Before everything fell apart, we visited them every summer. They had a huge backyard with a tire swing, and my grandma made the best chocolate chip cookies. But one day, I asked if we could visit them again, and Mom said flatly, "They don't want to see you anymore. They disappeared just like your dad," she said. "That's the kind of people they are, people who leave." I didn't know what to believe. I was just a kid. I missed Dad. I missed my grandparents, and I felt like I had done something wrong to make them all disappear. Things got worse the following year. Mom said she was getting remarried. His name was Greg. He moved into our house with his daughter Claire, who was the same age as me. At first, I tried to be nice to Claire. I thought maybe I could have a sister, someone to hang out with, but I was wrong. She hated me from the start. When I offered to help her on her first day at school, she rolled her eyes and said, "I don't need your help, loser." She'd take my clothes without asking, and when I confronted her, she didn't care. Once, she ruined my favorite sweater and said, "It looks better like this. It was ugly before." She changed the TV channel when I was watching. She hogged the bathroom. She laughed when I spoke at dinner and made fun of everything I said. "God, you're so annoying," she'd say. "No one cares about your dumb science club." And Mom? She did nothing. She'd look at me like I was causing drama. Greg would act like Claire was some poor victim and pat her on the shoulder. By the time Claire and I were 17, it was unbearable. She had her friends over constantly, and they treated me like I was invisible. "That's Rose," she'd say with a smirk. "She thinks she lives here." One night, I had a paper due for school. I'd spent weeks on it. Claire used the computer after me and somehow deleted the whole file. I knew she did it on purpose. When I confronted her, she smirked and said, "Prove it. Maybe you just forgot to save it. You're not as smart as you think." I snapped, "Why are you like this? Why do you always treat me like garbage?" She laughed. "I'm so tired of seeing your face every day. At least I won't have to deal with you much longer." That stopped me cold. What's that supposed to mean? She smiled again but brushed it off. "Nothing, just forget it." But I couldn't forget. Something about the way she said it sounded real, like she knew something I didn't. A few days later, I walked past Mom and Greg's room and overheard them talking. I wasn't trying to listen, but when I heard my name, I stopped. "She turns 18 next year," Mom said. "We won't have to support her anymore." Greg added, "Rose's room won't stay empty. My niece Amber needs a place to stay for college. She said she'd pay rent." I froze. My hands started shaking. They were planning to kick me out. That's when everything changed. I knew I couldn't stay there. I needed a plan. I called my best friend Olivia. We'd been close since middle school. She had her own apartment, and when I told her everything, she said, "Move in with me." so I started packing little by little. I only took what mattered: my clothes, laptop, documents, and a few things that reminded me of better times. One Friday night, while everyone was gone, Olivia came with her car. We loaded everything quickly. Before I left, I wrote a note and left it on the table. "I've moved out. Don't look for me, Rose." As we drove away, I expected to feel sad, but instead, I felt free. Olivia gave me a corner of her living room to use as my space. It was small, but it was safe. For the next few days, I waited. I thought Mom would call. I thought maybe she'd show up at Olivia's, but nothing. No texts, no calls, no messages. After 2 weeks of silence, I broke down. "They really don't care," I said to Olivia. "It's like I never existed to them." She put down her food and looked at me seriously. "What about your dad, your grandparents? You said they disappeared, but what if they didn't? What if your mom lied?" I stared at her. "What?" "She lied about everything else," Olivia said. "What if she lied about them too?" She opened her laptop. "What's your dad's name?" "Robert Anderson," I said quietly. I hadn't said his name in years. We searched online, and suddenly, there he was. Robert Anderson, living in Colorado. He looked nothing like the man Mom described. He looked successful, happy, alive. He had photos of a nice house, a fancy car, and business trips around the world. He ran his own company. Olivia turned to me. "Are you going to message him?" My heart was pounding. I didn't know what to say, but I typed a message anyway. "Hi, this is Rose, your daughter. I know it's been a long time, but I'd really like to talk to you." I stared at the screen, then hit send. 2 hours later, he responded. His message was long and full of emotion. He said he had been waiting for this day, praying for it. He told me that after the divorce, Mom told him I hated him. She told him I was seeing a therapist and that any contact from him would hurt me. None of it was true. With tears in my eyes, I typed back, "That's not true. I never hated you. I missed you every single day." For most of my life, I believed that my father had abandoned me, that he had simply disappeared and never cared enough to stay in touch. It was a story my mother told me over and over, until it became the truth I lived with. But then everything changed. That evening, after finally finding his contact information, we arranged a video call. I was nervous, my heart racing as I waited for the screen to load. When his face finally appeared, I gasped, my eyes filled with tears. He looked different from the photos I remembered as a little girl. His hair had more gray now, and there were deeper lines on his face, but his warm smile hadn't changed at all. We talked for hours. I poured my heart out. I told him about Mom's remarriage, how things had been hard with Claire, how I'd overheard plans to kick me out of the house, and how I'd run away to stay with my friend Olivia. When I told him that Mom claimed he'd never paid child support, his face turned serious. I could see anger and pain in his eyes. By the end of the call, he did something I never expected. He invited me to come live with him in Colorado. He said he'd send me money for a train ticket, and I could leave whenever I was ready. I said yes without thinking twice. What did I have to stay for? No one was looking for me. No one had tried to call. No one cared that I was gone. The very next day, I got an email from my father with the train ticket attached. Olivia drove me to the station and gave me a long, emotional hug before I boarded. I'll never forget how tightly she held me, whispering that things were going to get better. The trip took almost 2 full days. I sat by the window most of the time, watching the scenery change as we crossed state lines, flatlands, forests, then mountains. I thought a lot during that trip. I wondered what it would be like living with him. Would we feel like strangers, or like family? When the train finally arrived, I saw him right away. He was on the platform, looking into each window, searching for me. We stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say, before he stepped forward and pulled me into a hug. I felt his arms tighten around me. I felt his tears on my hair, and I knew, deep down, he hadn't stopped loving me. He drove me to his house, a beautiful 2-story home in a quiet neighborhood surrounded by mountains. It was peaceful and clean, like a place from a dream. Inside, I met his wife, Sarah. She smiled warmly and gave me a gentle hug. She said she had been looking forward to meeting me. They had been married for 5 years. Sarah worked as an art curator at a museum nearby, and my dad ran a technology consulting company. That night, as we sat around the dinner table, my father brought out a folder. Inside were copies of every child support check he had ever sent, along with bank statements to prove the money had been cashed. He had sent payments every month since the divorce, not just the minimum, more than enough to support me comfortably. I stared at the folder in disbelief. All those years, I'd been told he never cared, that he gave nothing, but the truth was the opposite. My mother had taken that money and used it for herself, new clothes, trips, her fancy life with her new husband Greg, and all the while, she made me feel guilty for asking for school supplies or shoes that fit. Sarah looked at me gently and said we might want to speak to a lawyer. My father agreed but said there was something more important we needed to do first: visit my grandparents. The next morning, we drove to a retirement community nearby. My grandparents had moved from Ohio just 3 years earlier to be closer to my father. I hadn't seen them since I was a child. When my grandmother opened the door and saw me, she froze. Her hand flew to her mouth and she whispered, "Rose," like she was afraid I might disappear. My grandfather came up behind her, and for a moment, the three of us just stared at each other. Then they pulled me into a hug, crying, laughing, shaking with emotion. Inside their small apartment, we sat around the table with hot chocolate. My grandmother remembered it was my favorite. They told me their side of the story. Mom had told them lies too. She told them I didn't want to see them, that I was in therapy because of things they'd supposedly done, that if they tried to reach out, it would damage my mental health. I was speechless. My grandmother led me to a closet and opened the door. Inside were boxes, each one marked with my name. They had saved every birthday and Christmas gift for me, every single year we'd been apart. They had hoped, prayed, that one day they could give them to me in person. They had even made a plan to contact me when I turned 18, that way, Mom couldn't stop them anymore. That night, back at my father's house, I made my decision. I was staying. This was my home now. The very next day, my father called a family law attorney who specialized in child support cases. After looking at the evidence, the lawyer said we had a strong case for fraud, but because some payments had come from company accounts, there might be challenges in court. A full trial could take over a year. Instead, the lawyer suggested trying to settle first. When my mother found out we were taking legal action, she started calling constantly. I ignored her until I couldn't anymore. One day, I finally picked up. She exploded. She screamed at me, called me ungrateful, selfish, a traitor. She said I had no idea what she had sacrificed for me. I let her finish. Then, in the calmest voice I could manage, I told her I knew the truth about the child support, the lies she'd told my father and grandparents, and how she and Greg were planning to kick me out and replace me with his niece. She went silent. Then she tried to backpedal, said I misunderstood, said she loved me and only wanted what was best. But I didn't believe her anymore. I ended the call, and for the first time in years, I felt free. A few weeks later, we met with her attorney. Both sides shared their evidence. It was overwhelming. My father's lawyer had records showing exactly where the money had gone: designer handbags, jewelry, spa visits, luxury trips, all paid for with money meant for me. Her lawyer knew they couldn't win in court, so they offered a settlement. After some back and forth, we agreed on $60,000 to be paid to me within 3 months. It wasn't everything we could have gotten, but it was enough, and it meant we wouldn't have to spend years in court. Mom signed the agreement without a word. She wouldn't even look at me. As we were leaving, her lawyer handed mine an envelope with my name on it. I waited until I was in the car to open it. Inside was a note. It said, "You are no longer my daughter. I have disowned you." Signed, Catherine Anderson Mills. Not Mom, not even Mother, just her full name, like I was a stranger. I stared at the words for a moment, then folded the note and tucked it back into the envelope. Strangely, I felt calm. The words were meant to hurt me, but they didn't. They only confirmed what I already knew, that I had made the right decision. I didn't write back. There was nothing left to say. I had found the truth, and I had finally found where I belonged.